Welcome to Indivisible Acadiana's first ever Congressional Candidate Roundtable. Thank you for taking your time out of your Saturday to join us here. And thank you to JSP for having us. Joining us today, we have 5 candidates who are opposing Representative Clay Higgins for the U.S. House of Representatives. We have Rob Anderson, Philip Connor, Dave Longley, Mimi Methvin, and Verone Thomas. This afternoon, we'll be hearing their perspectives on a variety of issues affecting us in LA District 3. So the format will be as follows. First, we're going to give them a chance to introduce themselves and answer a few questions we gave them a week ago in advance that they got to prepare an answer to. After that, we're going to ask them a series of questions chosen by the Indivisible leadership team, and then we'll ask each of them one question we picked specifically for them related to their campaign or their platform. Following that, any media in attendance will have a 10-minute period to ask them any questions they'd like, and after that, we will take questions we've been taking from the group on our Facebook forum. We unfortunately won't get to answer all of them, but we did choose the ones we thought were most pertinent, and there will be a chance to submit more questions if we have time for that. Following that, we will ask the candidates to leave the room, and the members of Indivisible Acadiana will have a link in our private Facebook group to vote for which candidate we would like to endorse as a group. This is really important because whichever candidate we endorse, we will be nominating for an endorsement from the National Indivisible group, and they're going to provide us with a lot of resources to help us defeat Clay Higgins. That's going to include tools for phone banking, voter canvassing, media assistance, campaign consultation, all sorts of awesome things. So we're really glad y'all joined us today to help us participate in this democratic procedure. We're really excited to nominate someone. So we're going to go ahead and lay out some ground rules. First off, of course, silence your phones. We ask that you refrain from cheering or doing any signs of support for any candidates just to help us stay on our timetable. Food is available to order, but we do ask that you go to the other side of the bar to order it so that you don't disrupt the event. So yes, please follow these rules. We can keep things rolling smoothly. So thanks to JSP again for letting us be here today. And so so I'm excited to get started. So first, we're going to let the candidates introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Rob Anderson. When I was 14 years old, I worked my first job laying asphalt in the middle of the night because in the summer, it's a bit too hot to do it during the day. On one shift, I stepped on a piece of broken rebar, went up to the side of my shoe, laid my foot open, and I had to walk home with a sneaker full of blood, making squishy noises. It was at that moment that I learned the value of work boots. Fast forward a number of years and several emergency room visits, and I had a job in a machine shop. I was working threading bolts that they used to put on diesel engines as thermostats. And at the same time as I had this job, I did jujitsu on the weekends and had broken several bones in both of my feet. I had to work an 8-hour shift, standing there on broken bones in both feet, and then walk about a mile home because I didn't have a car. And that was the moment where I learned about the shortcomings of mass transit and healthcare in this country. So I worked my way up in the blue-collar industry until I got my own business, doing well. I was doing home building, and then the recession hit. I lost my business and my house to the banks, and then the government bailed out the banks. So I went back into drilling, chasing my version of the American dream, which had turned into an American nightmare. And now I'm running for Congress. We don't need a government to tell us to work hard. We do work hard. We don't need the government to tell us anything. We tell them. That's the whole point of a representative. We want a Congress that isn't controlled by special interest groups, but by the people like me and you. That's the cornerstone of my entire platform. The entire reason I'm doing this is to get special interest money out of politics. I don't believe in being a little bit corrupt. Either you're a person willing to fight for what you believe in, or you're a person who can be bought. If you will be my voice, I will be yours.
First, I want to thank Indivisible Acadiana and Katie, who has put this wonderful event together. It's really, really remarkable to see so many people here, and it's a testament to the passion of the electorate, and it's very heartwarming, I think, for all of us, the candidates up here. My name is Dr. Philip Connor, a family physician from Lake Charles. I attended public high school there, and after graduating, went to LSU, and then on to medical school in New Orleans. After earning my doctorate, I moved back to Lake Charles and been practicing medicine there since. My mother is from Welsh, Louisiana, and my father's from Lake Arthur. And with those blue-collar roots, I've been instilled with a love of the culture and the people of Louisiana. I've also been blessed with 3 children whom I adore, and it's because of them that I've ventured out and am committed to improving the future for those children, or my children, and all the children in this state. Throughout the course of my career, the one constant is my love and regard for the people of Louisiana. Regardless of economic, social, or ethnic background, the decency and goodness has never disappointed me. So when the election of 2016 came around and the current representative was elected, I felt compelled to get involved. The state and the district are at a crossroads. Our leadership allows critical challenges of the people to fester and worsen while offering no solutions, or even worse, putting forth solutions that actually exacerbate the problems that we face. They can't be solved by looking backwards, but only by looking forward to the future without fear, in the knowledge that our future is better tomorrow than it has been in the past. They also can't be appealed by appealing to narrow constituencies. By drawing in large majorities of the people in Louisiana, we can build a coalition and a group of people willing to solve the problems that we all face. From the critical importance of guaranteeing health care, diversifying and growing our economy while shrinking income inequalities, criminal justice system, and protecting the environment, I'm committed to tirelessly working to overcome the hurdles we face. It is because of my faith in God and my love of Louisiana that I'm committed to seeing it through for the betterment of the state's future. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for JSP for hosting this event and IA for putting it together. My name is Dave Longwood. I am an Eagle Scout. I served in the Army for 9 years to pay for college, at which point I got 2 degrees and almost a 3rd degree. I've been very interested in national politics for the last 10 years, started getting serious about 5 years ago, and made it a hobby to start putting together planks of ways I could see that would benefit the whole nation. At the election of Clay Higgins, I decided I needed to do something. It's a travesty that we as voters don't actually get represented in Congress because of special interest groups, lobbyists, things like that. They basically control Congress. We don't have a voice anymore, and that needs to change. I've got plenty of planks to do some good in the country, but the first thing that has to happen is we have to get rid of the dark money in campaigning and lobbyists. That's why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Look at all these voters. This is awesome. Thank you, Indivisible. My name is Mimi Methvin. Mimi rhymes with Jimmy. I grew up in Alexandria, the second of 5 children. My mom and dad taught us to work hard and that every person was the same under the eyes of God. Second children pay close attention to issues of justice and equality from an early age. Those of you who are second children know exactly what I'm talking about. I have a degree in philosophy from Tulane and a law degree from Georgetown. I worked my way through law school, working full-time for Congressman Gillis Long during the day and attending law school at night. After law school, I returned to Louisiana and was an assistant U.S. attorney in Shreveport, working for the Department of Justice. In 1983, I was appointed U.S. magistrate judge here in Lafayette. I was reappointed 3 I was reappointed 3 times after the court and a citizens committee received public comment. And I stayed in that job for 26 years. I've been a career public servant with experience in all 3 branches of government. In 2009, I left the bench to become a professional mediator and to return to the practice of law. I decided to become a candidate because I believe the rule of law and our democratic institutions are in danger. I believe we need government that works for all of us and not just special interests and wealthy donors. The biggest issue we face is the flood of money in politics, and that's especially true since Citizens United was decided in 2010. Unless and until we get big money out of politics, we will not be able to bring down the prescription drug prices, stop the outsourcing of jobs overseas, or restore the middle class. I pledge not to accept money from PACs. My donations come strictly from individuals, so no one ever has to worry who I'm representing in Washington. People want a champion, a member of Congress who will speak truth to power and who will fight and put their interests first. So I have the experience, the skill, and the passion to be that champion, and that's why I'm in this race. Thank you.
How y'all doing today? My name is Verone Thomas. I also want to extend my thank you to Indivisible Acadiana. I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana. I graduated in 1985 from Lake Charles, Boston. I joined the United States Navy. In the Navy, I specialize in communications, tactical radar systems, and weaponry. After the Navy, I worked for companies such as Qualcomm, Nokia, and MP3, which I learned a lot from those different jobs that I was in the corporate world. Also, in 1993, I got a call from Tony Gwynn from the San Diego Padres, and I ended up being his music engineer for music. So I had a chance to actually experience the military, the corporate world, and also the average individual looking to get into the entertainment world. And I'm running for Congress to bring back the prosperity that we've lost along the wayside. We cannot continue to ignore the issues that Louisiana must face in order to revive the vitality of our economy. We need policies that have longevity and a permanent perpetual effect that will benefit many generations in the future. Basically, we do not need any more Band-Aids. We need real legislative actions that are concrete, because the opulence and the results that we're looking for will not make itself available until we directly sponsor bills that will elevate all of our aspirations. As of right now, the representation for Louisiana is maliciously harmful to the advancement and the progress that we deserve as a state. So it's my unequivocal endeavor to commission myself daily to put more focus on all the issues that will bring Louisiana out of the abyss that we're in. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So now we're going to move on to the prepared questions section. So the candidates were given these questions a week ago. They've had the last week to think about the best answer that they'd like to give us. So the first question is, what sets you apart from the other candidates in this race? So we're going to start with Mr. Rob Anderson. And it said like lean back when you're using the microphone.
Anybody who has met me for more than 15 seconds would know immediately what sets me apart from other candidates. One of which is I have a sense of humor. And the other one is I am probably the last person in the world anybody would ever expect to run for Congress. It was never an aspiration of mine. I never went to school with it in mind. I've been a freelance author. I've run drill rigs. I've run backhoes. I've worked in IT departments, but politics was never on my mind. But the last series of elections have highlighted a troubling trend in the United States to me, to the point where it feels imperative that somebody do something different. And so I'm stepping up here because it's a civic duty, and you know, I can't heckle from the sidelines anymore. I have to step up and do so.
Well, I've lived here my entire life. Through 15 years and experience in medicine and working in the community at large, I've treated thousands of patients. I understand the voters of this district acutely, and I'm quite confident that I have the only platform that can reach a plurality of voters that can actually win the election in November. I'm not bound by labels or ideological purity. My sole loyalty is to the people and the needs of this district and this state. Make no mistake, that's what it's going to take to win this election. From the problems of health care to the problems of the environment, I know the issues that we face, and we have a plan in place that will lead to equitable solutions that can appeal to voters and achieve the goals that we all seek, which is a better, just future for Louisiana.
What sets me apart in this race is that I can actually appeal to conservatives. I am not a conservative, I'm an independent, but that being said, I have drawn significant amount of support from them. Like it or not, we need some of those supporters to support us to be able to actually pull this from Clay Higgins. And it's not difficult to do it. In fact, I would encourage the other candidates to use their, I mean, it strikes me that you guys all are pretty much against lobbying and corruption. No kidding, we all should be. That's something that 97% of the American public supports. That's leverage, that has power. Let's use that. My point goes around the Citizens United ruling. They say, well, there are three ways of getting rid of a Supreme Court ruling. Number one is write a new amendment, which is very difficult. Number two is hold a constitutional convention, which is extremely dangerous because it puts in jeopardy all the, all of the amendments we already have in the Constitution. The third one is another Supreme Court ruling, which is honestly not very likely. What I plan on doing is making a law to prevent any form of payment to be given for the services of lobbying. We take the money out, the lobbyists scram.
So I think what sets me apart, I'll say two things. Number one, my experience in working in all three branches of government. When I worked for Gillis Long, my job was to get there at 5 in the morning, make the coffee, and then get the list of constituents that Congressman Long was going to call. And I woke a lot of people up at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, because he was connected to his constituents. I also served coffee to the Louisiana delegation. I watched the Louisiana delegation work across the aisle to get things done for Louisiana. It's a long time. I mean, this is the way politics needs to work. As a judge, I tried a lot of cases with and without juries. I had to make some tough decisions. I was able to, or had the challenge of interpreting laws drafted by Congress or by the legislature, and to struggle with how to interpret those laws. So I know the hazards of writing legislation. And finally, just as a personal matter, settling cases and doing a mediation practice has been one of the things that I'm passionate about. Bringing people together at the table and getting things done in a win-win situation. I have experience at that. I have, I think, a skill for that, and that's what I want to bring to representing you in Congress.
What sets me apart from the other candidates is my experience in the military. I've learned to work under pressure. And right now, Louisiana is in a cold, red situation. We cannot continue to gamble with the future of our state anymore. And right now, that's all we're seeing right now. We're seeing a whole lot of gambling. And I believe we need somebody that's going to stand tall, with a strong voice and represent the collective voice and bring the collective voice to Washington. So I believe that we need to actually stand tall and be able to represent what's really happening in Louisiana right now. Right now, we are sinking, literally, and with no policies, no bills being written that actually directly affects Louisiana and brings Louisiana out of the abyss that we're in.
Thanks, everyone. We do ask that you hold your applause so that we can move through this in a timely manner. Thank you. And try not to touch the microphone to the table. That's why it's doing that. So the next question is, what is your plan to prevent the re-election of Clay Higgins?
Oh, it's here? Oh, sorry. Sorry. I think the first thing you have to do to overcome an incumbent is to recognize his appeal. Clay Higgins ran a campaign based on the Holy Trinity: guns, religion, and patriotism. Very basic appeals done very, very well, which allowed him to unseat the heir apparent to this seat. However, we can show the emptiness and the hollowness of that rhetoric by putting forth policies and plans that will actually move this state forward. Further, we can further show that his policies are actually detrimental to the very people he is supposed to be representing, and that he's a lackey of the Republican Party establishment and is not an independent voice for this district, but rather is a tool to put forward the agenda of people who have no interest in this state or the people of this district. By bringing up those contradictions and bringing up those differences, we can bring us forward to November to victory.
So how to unseat Clay Higgins? This has a lot to do with my first answer, the appeal to conservatives. Again, we need their support to be able to do it. And I intend to steal as many conservative votes from Higgins as I can. There are a couple different ways of going about doing this. One, call him out for what he's done, the legislation that he's already voted for, even the rules and regulations he voted for or against. Most recent example, I've called the man out publicly for his vote against the FEC rules and regulations that effectively stripped everyone of their internet privacy. ISP providers can basically take and or sell your information at will, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. In fact, you probably won't even know it's happening because they are not required to let you know anymore. And that's one example, but the point is, all you gotta do is a little bit of research. That's it. In addition, the man's persona is a contrived one. He sells himself as the Cajun John Wayne, which we've all familiar with that expression. A couple things to note. His badge, the badge that he's really proud of. Oh, I'm already out of time?
Yeah, it's 1 minute.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I guess I'm done then.
We have to remember that Clay Higgins was elected by 16% of the registered voters of his district. Clay Higgins' re-election is not a done deal. And I don't know how to hold this mic, but anyway, the key thing is to get out and vote. Louisiana is not a red state. Louisiana is a non-voting state. So every person that is writing postcards, that is talking to their neighbors, everyone that is working hard to inspire people to get out, to say this time there is going to be a choice. There are candidates to vote for, and not just candidates to vote against, then we are going to win, and we're going to change where Louisiana is going. All of us here who are passionate about this state, we have a chance to turn this around, and we can do it on our own, on our platform, talking about the issues that really matter. Thank you.
Clay Higgins is a overly eccentric character with a bizarre personality that has alienated his own party so far. As I go around the district, I'm hearing Republicans wish that they could take their vote back that they gave to Clay Higgins. So I believe that it's going to take a collective effort from the whole district. We got to get the black community together with the white community. with the Asians, with the Latinos. So we have to come together and actually to put up a collective front in order to unseat Clay Higgins. And that's my plan. My plan is to get to all the communities, get to the rural areas, get to all the way back to Cameron, all the way to St. Mary. We got to touch every community to beat Clay Higgins. And we also got to keep in mind that a lot of the voters that left Clay Higgins is also looking at Josh Guillory. So we got to realize that there's two Republicans in this race, and we can't just concentrate just on Clay Higgins. So it's a matter of sticking together and sticking to our democratic values. I believe that if we show that our values are strong, I believe that we can overcome the obstacle of unseating Clay Higgins.
We started out our campaign, one of our early slogans was ideas and not ideology. And that was a direct attack on Mr. Higgins and his lack of ideas or thoughts or ability to think. To win in this district, I believe that the more I've gone around this process, meeting people, shaking everybody's hands, we're not that different. There's not a whole lot of difference between people here or people in, working in drilling or, working in the electrical fields or, harvesting crayfish. We're all just people. So the idea that we get lined up as Democrats and Republicans is why we chose to be independents. We're from Louisiana. We're not from a party. I don't represent any national party or ideology. We want what's best for this district. And that's literally all we want. So how do you beat Clay Higgins, serve the district better than he can?
Thank you. As a reminder, please hold your applause till the end of each section. So now we're going to have a series of questions that the Indivisible Acadiana leadership team selected after a lot of consideration. So our first question, starting with Mr. Longlonnet, is if you were elected, what would you like for your signature accomplishment to be at the end of your first term?
Signature accomplishment. The absolute number one thing that has to happen before any other significant change can be made is getting rid of paid lobbying. Again, going around the Supreme Court Citizens United decision, we have to take paid money, dark money, from corporations and whatnot out in the electoral process. And it's going to be a long, hard fight because I guarantee you the rest of Congress is not going to be one giving up that easy money that they get from lobbyists. But that being said, if we really want change in Congress, if we really want change in the nation, we have to do that before anything else can be passed. Healthcare fails because of that. Gun control fails because of that. Literally anything, any significant amount of reform that we can do as a nation will not happen until paid lobbying ends. And I don't think I'm out of time yet, but that's all I got to say.
I have to agree with Dave on that because that is the number one thing that has to be done. Campaign finance reform absolutely has got to be reformed. The great thing is that we are seeing across America an army of candidates that are speaking on this same issue, how critical this is, because it gets to the fundamental problem of government policies that do not serve people. And I speak about this often. The hollowing out of the middle class is what we're seeing with a lot of increased poverty, a lot of transfer of wealth to the 1%, and the middle class being squeezed. This is capitalism on steroids, where it doesn't even make sense, it doesn't make long-term sense for corporations or for the economy to keep pursuing these policies which only benefit the powerful and the wealthy. We're not going to be able to sustain the United States' position in the world, and in fact, we fall way behind most countries on that issue. Healthcare is an absolute critical issue. We need to get in there and do something right away about that issue. I know, and I agree with Dave, campaign finance reform is going to take a while. I don't think it's something that's going to happen overnight. In the meantime, we need to take steps to address healthcare problems and also common sense things like allowing the CDC to study gun violence. That is, again, we're held hostage by the gun lobby on a lot of issues, and we need to be able to put a stop to those outcomes.
My signature platform item is revenue. That's what we see the problem in Louisiana right now, when in Baton Rouge, and also we see it on the national level. Right now, Louisiana, we're number 50 in every item you can think of, or issue that they bring up. They always say, you're number 50, you're number 51. We're number 1 in exporting. So we have to look at what we're positive at, what we're good at, and we got to take use of that and make use of that. So I believe that transportation is the greatest thing that I can accomplish while I'm in office. I believe that we have to get rid of our old rail system, and we got to move product, people, material around a lot faster and utilize our access to the Gulf. We need revenue. We need revenue for our healthcare system, for our education system, and those are some of the things that we could do to actually bring revenue in. Number 2, I would like to see marijuana get legalized fully, not just play around with it with medicinal use. Why? Because we're a crop state, and we need to utilize the agriculture division of our state and bring that revenue from marijuana and hemp use to the education system, like other states like Colorado is doing, and Las Vegas. They're actually sustaining their education system. They're sustaining their healthcare system, and they're also feeding the homeless and housing the homeless just from marijuana profit sales. So you add those 3 together, moving transportation, moving people and material around faster, and also with the hemp, with hemp, you got 50,000 products you can use that can take the burden off of the oil and gas industry that's sinking. There's so many things that we can use in Louisiana that actually uplift us right now. We have a lot of culture, we have a lot of resources, and we should use them all.
Just to clarify, my understanding of what a congressional representative does primarily is advocacy. So what would I like to see happen for our district? I'd like to see a lot of good things. But I cannot sit up here and promise you that I'm going to go up as one of 435 congresspeople and bring all kinds of these package deals to the district as if suddenly I am, dictator. My position is that I advocate for a boost in infrastructure in Louisiana. And by infrastructure, I consider them all holistically tied together. I consider healthcare, education, and the actual physical infrastructure of a region is what makes it more desirable for companies, new industries to come here other than relying on just oil and gas and agriculture. Places that are good to live in the United States have those 3 things: good healthcare, good education, and roads that you can drive along without breaking the axle on your truck. So that is my primary position, is to actually speak for Louisiana, not to sign a bill because the guy in the White House wants us to.
As a physician, I think clearly my main goal is going to be healthcare. I started my practice, and I'm going to show my age a little bit, in the early 90s. It was whenever I started going through, actually the middle 90s, into medical school. And we began to see a change in the healthcare system for the worse. We see rising premiums, rising deductibles, and decreasing access. That culminated in the ACA, which was an attempt to try and correct these injustices and these inequalities. Unfortunately, that has been completely dismantled now, and we're back to square one. I cannot tell you that a day goes by that I don't have 2 full-time employees whose sole purpose is to argue with private insurance companies to try and seek the care that my patients need. It is a burden, and it is a huge drain on our economy. And if I could get one thing done, it would be to help bring stability and access to care for every single member of our society. Along those lines, we have to understand that it is an enormous drain on our economy at the present time. The number one cause of bankruptcy, the number one cost for municipalities and private industry is healthcare costs. The only way that we can change that dynamic and begin to bring back some sort of sanity and some sort of access and justice to the healthcare system is to have a Medicare for All plan, instituted slowly so that it is not too cumbersome or detrimental to the economy, but is done responsibly with the guarantee that every single person in our society has access to the health care that they need and access to the medications that they desire and are critical to their health. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next... So our next question, starting with Ms. Methvin, will be, what do you think will be the biggest challenge of holding a national office?
That is an interesting question. The biggest challenge is, of course, like everyone else sitting up here, I'm a first-time candidate. This is brand new. I do have the advantage of having worked for a congressman for 3 years. I think it's actually creating a balance between staying connected to the people that you're representing and staying up on all the very complicated issues that we face today. You know, one thing that ties in with this discussion about all the money that's involved is that right now most of our representatives spend half of their time on the phone calling lobbyists and special interests for money so that they can get reelected. This election cycle is 2 years. So by the time you're in office, you're expected by everyone to start running for office again, start getting your war chest together. So this highlights why it's so important that we do campaign finance reform so campaigns are publicly financed. I do not intend to spend half my time on call time. I'm not going to do it. But what the alternative to that is finding a way, of course, to compete and to keep that office, keep representing the people, keep doing the good work, and keep getting reelected. So I'm not all for, obviously hanging on to this job forever, but to be effective, you need to spend some time on Capitol Hill. You need to develop your reputation. You need to get on committees where you can have some influence. And the way it is now, you get the committees where they think you can raise the most money. And so, again, I'm going to work my butt off to change the campaign finance laws. I know I have the talent, the ability to roll up and work hard on all these complicated issues and get things done for the people, but this is probably going to be the biggest challenge for any of us.
I like to concur with what she just said. Getting in the right committees will be the biggest challenge because we need to get the right ears in the game and get the right people listening to what the issues are in Louisiana right now. I believe that it's a national position, but when you're number 50 and when you're at the bottom of the totem pole in the whole nation, I believe that whatever we do as congressmen is actually going to help Louisiana come up out of the abyss, and at the same time it's going to help the whole nation. The object is to help the nation by making sure Louisiana's not the weakest link. So the hardest job is to actually get the other congressmen, the senators, to believe in what's going on in Louisiana, to understand the problems that we were having here, and understand that we definitely need some collaboration, and also stop some of the polarization that's going on. You know, I agree with the independents up here. We need to fuse the different ideas from the Republican and the Democratic Party together, and that's going to be an obstacle to get the yays and the nays, you know, from the different parties agreeing with each other. So stopping polarization and getting on some of these committees will be the greatest issue that we face coming in this office. Also, like some of the candidates already said, being that this is my first time as a candidate for Congress, I believe that there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be able to assess, to be able to make sure that I'm representing Louisiana in the right way. So I'm a student every day in this election. I look at every issue, I look at every article, I read daily to make sure that I'm representing the collective voice from Louisiana.
I think the biggest challenge of federal office, so to speak, is getting there. This process is somewhat humbling, it's difficult, and but it's also eye-opening and enlightening. And getting along and managing complex systems is kind of what I do. I've always gotten along with, I don't know if you know about the blue-collar fields, but the drilling industry tends to be filled with people who wear the red hat. And I get along with them just fine. And we debate and we talk and we find solutions. And so going to Washington and actually working with other congresspeople who've gotten to that point and looking for common solutions doesn't seem to be as difficult as campaigning is, to me. I could be wrong. I hope to find out. But I haven't actually worried about the challenges of Washington because I think that's just a job that needs to be done like any other. And I never get nervous before I start a job. You get nervous at the job interview, and that's what we're doing now.
Well, my greatest challenge in being a congressman is probably convincing my wife to let me go to do the job in Washington. I think that whenever all of us are up here, it's a trust and it's an earning of the goodwill and the loyalty of the people in the district we're representing. There is such I hate to use the word sinkhole or a dark place in Washington that you can get sucked into. And staying loyal and staying connected to the people of this district is going to be the single greatest challenge that I'm going to have. And I feel it acutely every day throughout this campaign to be worthy of the people of this district, because I love this area and I love the people here and I want to do a good job and try and make the future better for them. And so that's going to be the challenge every single day while I'm there, whether it be healthcare, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be environmental protections. My sole purpose and my sole challenge is to do the best job I can every day for the people of this district. And so that's why I'm going, and I think that challenge is going to be very acute, facing what we were going to face in Washington. But I'm up to it, and I know that at the end of the day, if the people of Louisiana can look at me and they're proud that they voted for me, then I did the best that I could.
Okay, biggest challenge. Honestly, as an independent, it's going to be going up head-to-head with both major national parties and the lobbyist interest. Again, I've already pointed out how much control they have over the political system. They're going to fight me every single step of the way. Because the thing is, they don't necessarily want the status quo to change. We do. As a representative, I'm going to be your voice. One thing I do plan on doing is giving constant feedback to the public on what I'm going to do, what I'm doing, and what I'm up against. In fact, specifically as goes to the anti-lobbyist thing, because I expect such a hard fight from Congress, I'm going to call a whole lot of news conferences to say, hey, these are the people who are voting against your best interest. These are the people in Congress who are voting to prevent the anti-paid lobbying bill from passing. I'm going to do that over and over and over again until it finally happens. 97% of the public support this. It's just a matter of time before Congress realizes that their own re-elections are up for grabs if they don't comply. I'm also going to act as if I'm only a one-term congressman. I'm not going to focus on my work, not on getting re-elected. I'm counting on the voters to determine from my record whether I deserve a second term or not.
Right, we definitely have a lot of really good answers here. So for the next part, we took submissions from the group, and we've been monitoring everyone's platforms and campaigns since everyone announced. So we chose a question specific to each candidate, And we're going to go in alphabetical order for this one. So starting with Mr. Rob Anderson. The recent representatives for our district have been doctors, lawyers, CEOs, and of course, a law enforcement officer. Why do you think a blue-collar worker would make a better congressman, and what led you to run as an independent candidate since we haven't had an independent representative to date?
Well, actually, I'm sort of a progressive independent, just to correct that. And in 1915, as I looked up, this district did have a progressive congressperson, Whitmell Martin, 1915, the Bull Moose Progressive Party. So there is a precedent, but however, in this century, there has not been one before, so why would you pick independent? Well, I'm independent, as I said before, because whereas I mostly align with the Democrats, obviously, I'm sitting here, I don't align with any national party completely. I align with what I think are common sense policies. Every one of my policies, you may or may not agree with it, but there's a logic behind it. So I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question? Why as a blue-collar worker? Well, as a blue-collar worker, that does not qualify me to be in Congress. However, I've done a lot of things. What qualifies me is that I'm extremely interested in complex things, always have been. I am a writer, I am a painter, I am a musician. I've done all those things professionally. I've bounced around until, constantly seeking new challenges. But what I've always been, since I was a child and up to hopefully including now, is a people person. I like people. I like their stories. I like advocating for them. I like standing between a smaller person and a bully. Just because I took martial arts when I was young and it's fun to piss bullies off. So I like standing up for people and doing the right thing just because I can. Being blue collar has nothing to do with it, I don't think, but it also is not a strike against. This is it's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and I'm one of the people. Thanks. Oh, different question.
Thank you. All right, so for Dr. Philip Connor. In your opinion, for the good of the residents of District 3, is it better to be a progressive candidate or a centrist candidate?
That one's easy, in my mind. We have got to be in the middle because we have to recognize the facts that we are in a very, very red district. And I firmly believe with all of my heart that many of the Republican voters out there are persuadable. And by putting forth a progressive platform that is aggressive in meeting the needs is critical, but at the same time, it has to be done in the messaging and in the voice that will appeal to the very people that you're trying to earn their votes. So it doesn't mean being disingenuous with your positions. It doesn't mean ignoring the problems that we face or the injustices that are out there. And it does mean rejecting the radicalism on the other side. But we have to recognize that in order to build a coalition that can actually win the election, which is what we all want, in order to institute the ideas that we all care about, it is incumbent upon us to appeal to the largest number of people in this district that we possibly can. I believe that with all of my heart, and from the very beginning and going out and meeting with people, it's the refrain that we've been hearing over and over again. It is an enormous hurdle running as a Democrat in this district of the preconceptions and basically the slanders that are put forward against our party and our candidates. That's a battle we have to face every single day. And so the only way to be able to do that is messaging in such a way that we can appeal to those voters that are persuadable to come to our side, because we know that we're on the side of the right, and we know that our plans can work and be successful in this district. And I feel confident by appealing to them, we can build that coalition that's capable of winning.
Thank you. So for Mr. Dave Longlinay, we have the question. You've stated previously that you wish to raise the number of teachers, raise their salaries, and give each of them a $500 stipend a year. So we want to know how you plan to pay for that.
So as far as the stipend goes, the way I figure is basically have a per head tax. It can be done by a payroll tax. Is probably the one that's going to hurt the least, but $5 per child, per household, per year is going to pay for the stipend, and then actually a little bit extra too on top of that. As far as the teacher salaries go, that's going to be something that either is going to have to be raised by the local school boards, or I'm toying with the idea, I haven't actually finished the research yet, but toying with the idea of having federal grants to basically assist the local school boards to be able to actually raise teacher salaries. Because the thing is, if you don't have competitive salaries for teachers, you're going to lose the best and brightest in the field. Even with the calling of education, why necessarily would you want to take a $30,000 a year job teaching? Why not go work for private industry and make $80,000 with the same degree? If you don't attract teachers to the profession, you can't expect things to change in the education system.
Thank you. So for Ms. Mimi Methvin, during your career as a judge, what have you done to keep young people of color from being unnecessarily incarcerated? And is there a time when you regret not doing more for a young person of color? Is there a time when you regret not doing more for a young person of color?
I've spoken about this, thank you for the question, before. In the years that I was a U.S. magistrate judge, we didn't have many juveniles at all, but we did have a lot of young African-American people caught up in drug arrests. And if you all remember, the Sentencing Commission set mandatory penalties, maximum penalties for crack cocaine as very much more harsh than for powder cocaine. Looking back on it now, clearly there was a racial component to that based upon what population more likely uses crack versus cocaine. I will say that as many people know, I was a U.S. magistrate judge 26 years. I set bonds in thousands and thousands of cases. But the good thing about that experience was that federal bail law was reformed in 1984. And I can honestly say I do not remember one occasion where I did differently according to anyone's race. Had nothing to do with that. It was a great thing about being in the federal court system that was well-funded, we had good resources, and we treated everyone equal before the law. But in federal bail law, you cannot be held without bail simply because you're poor. And that I found out in 2014 when I was sitting as a state judge is not the way it works in the state system. And right now, 53% of the people sitting in the Lafayette Parish Jail are there, most of them because they are too poor to afford to pay a bail bondsman 12.5%. And that is the worst. Of course, that's a state issue, but it is something that I will be talking about as a congressional candidate and as a member of Congress. I believe the Department of Justice can partner with a private company like Pew, as they have done with the Justice Reinvestment Task Force, and we can change these policies. Right now, we're subsidizing the bail bond industry with taxpayer dollars here to incarcerate people because of poverty, and that needs to change.
All right, and finally for Mr. Verone Thomas. In your opinion, what is the best way to maintain a level of professionalism when conversing with future voters in person and across various social media platforms?
Well, I am a Facebook junkie, and I love debating on Facebook, so I'm very opinionated. I believe that people want the truth. People are tired of the BS that's going around in politics, and they want a straight shooter. They want somebody that's going to tell them the way it is, and that's basically what I do. And my truthfulness is based on my passion and my compassion for Louisiana, because right now I see Louisiana sinking real fast. I'm a student of the game. I like to invent things. I like to bring new things to the table that haven't been seen before. I have a vision of the future that I believe other people don't see. That's why I did invent a system called a Hyperloop that goes 750 miles an hour. It's a rail system with where a capsule passes through a tube. And I believe Louisiana can benefit the most from that. I see Louisiana sinking with our coastal restoration right now is going in the wrong direction. The coastal plan doesn't really bring to fruition exactly what's needed in Louisiana right now. We got the biggest hypoxic zone in the country right now, the size of New Jersey, which a hypoxic zone is basically a dead zone where the oxygen is no longer present and the sea life is going further out. So I believe these are things that the people want to hear about. People want to know what's going on with their state. They want to know the issues, and they want to know the solution that we're going to use to actually solve these issues. How are we going to keep Louisiana afloat? How are we going to bring more revenue to Louisiana? How are we going to take care of the hypoxic zone, which is affecting the fishing industry? This is the issues that our district is known for, and that's how we contribute to our state, through the oil and gas industry, through the fishing industry, and I believe that that's what we have to concentrate on in this election.
Thank you, everyone. So now, do we have any members of the media here who have any questions they'd like to ask? Because if not, then we're going to move on to the questions that were submitted by the group. Okay.
Latino. I'm going to pass the microphone for El Poder Latino. Is a Spanish program.
Good morning. I am a faculty member at UL, and I have been trying to start helping the Hispanic community to get more involved in basically with the institutions in Lafayette or the Ecoriana area. So has been working, this week I have a meeting with LIDA, and the institutions really have a good intention to connect the Hispanic community with them, because they are recognizing that the total population in Louisiana is growing so much. Basically, the Latino population is about 5% out of the 4.6 million that we are in Louisiana state. So, the intention is there. They really, I see the intention that they want to work with the community. But in fact, there is not a strategy, a clear strategy, how to connect those communities, or that they are minority, to, with the institutions, basically government institutions, okay? So I would like to know in specific what you have in mind in terms of strategies to integrate these minority groups. Okay, thank you.
The specific question you're asking is, what strategy would we have in mind to move forward integrating new minorities? Okay, well, I'm probably at a bit of a loss on that, because you may or may not know, but my wife is Puerto Rican, so I don't think of Hispanic population as a minority group. It's half of my family is Hispanic. Oh, I know. Absolutely. Obviously, we would welcome all cultures, and I do believe in actually bilingualism being taught in schools and such like that. So I'm not sure what specific strategy you're looking for me to say that.
What I'm saying is that there is the intention from the government to do better, okay? But unfortunately, there is.
Are you addressing the immigration issue that's going on right now?
No, immigration.
No. Okay.
I'm not talking about immigration, because at the end, that does not matter. Because the immigration is started from one individual that should not affect the community. The point here is to create, some programs that really are effective to attract those human resources that are trying to really do their best in this country, in this state too. They are really big workforce that is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but
In the construction industry,
my question is,
especially.
what
In the fishing industry.
are, what is like, I want to see the plan. What is the plan from you guys that you are going to work with the minority? I'm not talking only Hispanics, I'm talking about Asians, Black, community, those, is my main question.
I suppose I still don't understand. My point was that, well, my point was that we're Americans, all of us.
Yeah, you guys are talking about education, health.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, what, in your sector, what is that, plan do you have to integrate the, communities like Hispanics, Black, Asian, that
I always believe it. It's the same with anybody. It's always community outreach. You always work with the people who know the communities you're working in. There are 785,000 people in this district. And as much as I'd love to, I can't meet every single one. But I am absolutely willing to work with everyone. And you recruit from the neighborhoods that you want to reach. That's always how it works. In our volunteers, in my campaign, everybody who's volunteered for us or started working for us from the very beginning, back before we even filed when it was exploratory, till now, is still with me. We've had no turnover. We work with everybody and diverse populations. And so I always, you're talking about the communities, we always recruit from those communities. If we wanted to speak to people, in Lake Charles, Lafayette, DeQuincy, where I'm from, you always work with the locals in that area. And, whether they be African American or Hispanic or the Asian population or the guy who's got the great Indian restaurant in Lake Charles, you talk to the people directly. So what mission would I have is the same as anybody, is deal directly with the people, community interaction. I hope that answers it, because I'm still not sure. I got it right. You want to feel that one? Sure. And that's what I would do. I would ask you. Is that a shorter version?
I think it comes down, one, to a sense of welcoming to those communities. And I think our current administration and our current leadership has been draconian in their presentation of disenfranchising the Latino community and portraying them as a net negative to our country. So the first thing you have to use is to use the bully pulpit of what you stand for as a congressman and demand equal protection under the law and equal protection for those communities that feel like they don't feel a part of the system. Second, I think a lot of the Latino community, as well as every community, cares about fundamental issues such as raising the minimum wage, protecting workers' rights in terms of unionization, in terms of workers' compensation for injuries, in terms of being able to build communities that are respected within their wherever they're living at that time. I've been in Nicaragua several times on mission trips, and the experience that I've had there has been incredibly, incredibly eye-opening to me. I've seen the communities that have been devastated by the immigration issue, which I know you didn't want to talk about, but the constant flowing back and forth of a utterly corrupt and broken system. If we can advocate for those communities and make them feel welcome in our country, have work programs, have the capacity to be able to have those workers use their skills to the best of their benefit for their future and their kids' future and feel like they are a welcome part of our community, that's going to go a long way to stripping away a lot of those divisions that are between us. It's a challenge because in this current climate, there is a clear attempt to demonize the Latino community. And it's up to every one of us to reject that and to stand up as our brothers and sisters and say that we are all one and we will not step back or shirk from those characterizations and battling back against them. So that's what I would do.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't actually have a particular plan to integrate minorities. I plan to help the whole population as a whole. My opinion, when you recognize a group as different, that's what makes them be perceived as different, and that's kind of what we're trying to fight against as progressives. I mean, the idea is we're going to lift everybody up as a whole. We're all Americans here, and that's kind of the point.
When I worked for Congressman Long, while I was in law school, my job was constituent liaison, and we had staff members also in the district who were constituent liaisons. So in essence, you know, my pledge is there will be a conversation. So any constituent that needs to connect with any federal programs, state programs, know what resources are available, that will be done. And it will be someone who could speak Spanish, or we will find somebody who can speak the language, so that that is not a problem. But in fact, you know, that's a challenge for lots of people in the district. Our government agencies and systems are so complicated, and help is so spread out, and you really need someone that works in this area day after day after day, and has developed relationships to be able to guide people and help them to connect and find resources, figure out how to get things done, and that is a very important role of a person that's working. So
I will tell you one thing that the government needs to do. First of all, they need to find, really the problem that I have, because I'm doing research on that, and I'm trying to work on them to find out how exactly where they are, what they are doing. But unfortunately, the Louisiana government don't have data that can help us, the researchers, to help the communities. I think we should start just developing some kind of data that help us to focus on those groups, on where they are more concentrated. So I think that is, one of the strategies that we can start with, you know, building up some data that can help us to allocate the resources of Louisiana to them and help them to contribute to that, you know, Louisiana economy. I think is what we're missing.
okay, and maybe not everybody heard you, but you were saying that we need to collect data so that in fact we know where people are, what they need. Yeah. And I think this is a perfect example. This is what government is. It's a conversation. It is not a top-down thing. And thank you very much for that, because this is how we learn to be effective as representatives, is to have a dialogue with constituents and understand how government can function in a better way. And I think that's an excellent, excellent idea. So thank you very much.
I believe that when it comes to minorities, we have to have a vivid understanding of where the minority communities are, where they've been, so we can actually know how we can help advance minorities to where the majority is. In the past, the minorities have experienced systemic favoritism in the financial sector, disparities in home loans, segregation in education, and the fact of all, and also is the fact that the laws, opportunities, and constitutional rights have only become available within the last 50 years to most minorities. So we have to understand that first, and we have to also understand that we have to change what the conditioning is, the conditions are. For instance, in the black community, we've been conditioned to just go out and vote. Okay, well, in these times, we need to also be involved in not just voting, but be effective in who's actually on the ballot. We need to actually be involved in who's being selected to be on the ballot. So we got to go to the town halls, we have to go to the debates and the backroom meetings, and we got to get involved in the political process. So I believe that's the number one issue that we have to deal with. We have to understand where the minorities are so we can bring them to where the majority is. And I believe that in these times we're actually achieving that. I think the minorities are getting more involved. I believe that our voice is being heard, and we just basically have to get all the way involved in the whole political process.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the section of questions that were submitted by the group. We did have about 25 questions that were submitted. We picked the top 5. So we're going to start with Mr. Thomas. What is your solution for the violence issue in our country, and particularly in the 3rd District of Louisiana?
Basically, that kind of like, that lets me start off where I left off at, because it's a cycle. We're seeing a cycle from poverty. The lack of education and poverty actually is the recipe for violence. So we gotta bring some economic development into some of the communities that we know are facing some of the harshest times because of housing situation and education. So those two together is what I see as being the actual of what's actually affecting the crime right now. When you look at the black-on-black crime, I don't see it being no different than the white-on-white crime, but when you're in proximity with each other and you corralled in one area of a city, then usually who you come in contact with is who you going to see more violence with. So I believe that each community have their own situation that they have to deal with. Right now, we're seeing a violence in our school system with the gun violence. You know, I'm gonna say this real quick. I believe that we need to invest in smart guns. Like I said, I like to look at the future, and I think that smart guns would handle a situation like happened in Florida. Whereas if the school had a beacon that went out and said that this school is a safe zone, when that smart gun entered that area, it would automatically disengage until it leave that area. And also, in order to get the old guns off the street, we would have to change the ammunition, where ammunition only works in smart guns. So there's a lot of things that I think that we can implement. It's going to take a while, but we got to start them. The reason why we're seeing so much problem in Louisiana right now, in the 3rd District right now, is because we haven't implemented things for the future. We keep procrastinating on those things. So I believe if we want to get to the future, we have to start now. Even though some things may seem like it's going to take a while to do, if we don't start now, it's going to never get done.
Thank you. So next, Dr. Connor. In light of Louisiana's recent 15-week abortion ban, will you support any legislation that limits a woman's rights to make decisions regarding her own body?
I'm a physician. I've trained in obstetrics. I've delivered babies. I've helped women through very difficult pregnancies. I've seen children that have been born with birth defects and have been born very, very healthy, live loving and productive lives. It's a very difficult, contentious issue, and I would never, never minimize the difficulties of the women go through with these challenges. With that in mind, I have to say that I am pro-life, because I firmly believe, and I think science backs us up on this, that there is a genetic individual child present within this dynamic. And within that, we have to have some sort of protections in place in order to be able to protect the life of the child as well as the life of the mother. That's been my position all throughout this, and it's going to continue to be. I am pro-life, so yes, I would.
So you would limit the right for women to reproductive, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what pro-life means, yes.
Oh, well, not necessarily. Okay,
Are you okay with what we're doing in Afghanistan? Because that would make the question if it's pro-life or not. What's happening in Yemen? Sorry. Pro-war, you're not pro-life.
All right. Moving on, for Ms. Methvin, the next round of FEC reports will be published on July 15th and will show all campaign funding through June 30th. How are you funding your campaign, and do you believe in accepting PAC money?
I am not accepting PAC money, and you will not see any PAC money contributions on my FEC report. We are taking donations from individual people. Many people may or may not know that that federal candidates cannot accept contributions from corporations, but there is a misperception about that. So I often frame it in that way, that I'm not accepting money from corporations or from PACs. But that is at the foundation of my campaign. I think we have to put our money where our mouth is. So I have a lot of small dollar donors, most in the district, some elsewhere in Louisiana, and some elsewhere in the United States. People that have taken an interest in the campaign. Again, I will put the number of my donors against anybody else, although, you know, what's on anyone's June 30th report is, you know, I guess we'll see what that is. But as you all know, Rudy Giuliani's coming for a $2,700 per person fundraiser for Josh Guillory. And I would suggest that anyone that has that kind of a fundraiser is going to be compromised. It sounds to me like that person is going to need to be a rubber stamp for the Republican Party. And that is what we're fighting against. I think I've heard most people here, or many people up here, have taken the same approach, that we have got to get the corruption out of politics before we can get anything done that helps ordinary Americans. So.
Thank you. For Mr. Longley, what steps would you take to provide real and effective oversight of the Trump administration to prevent abuses of power, conflicts of interest, and damage to historic civil rights?
Well, for one thing, I could think we can all agree that Congress needs to do their job in oversighting the executive branch. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. This is, oh, sorry. That's a good question. Basically, Congress needs to just do their job. I mean, if the executive branch oversteps their bounds, they need to rein them back in. There was a bill introduced recently that would effectively give unlimited war powers to the president by being able to reassign, like, for instance, if you were to say associated groups with terrorists or whatnot, you can actually basically have the president declare war on another country, with Congress only having basically the ability to veto that. So it's actually a negative thing. Congress at that point wouldn't approve war, they would disapprove war. And that's giving way too much of congressional power to the executive branch. That should never happen, and the congressman who wrote that bill should be ashamed of himself for it.
Thank you. And for Mr. Anderson, there are many Bernie Sanders voters who are disenfranchised with the political process. How would you address their needs?
Again, if you've looked at my website or talked to me for more than about 30 seconds, you realize that I do. The disenfranchisement with the political process is why I am actually running, because if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Bernie Sanders, he and I don't agree on everything ideologically, believe it or not. However, I do like that he sparked a large section of the electorate, including and especially millennials. I have several on my team who just didn't even show up to vote in the last congressional election. When you're talking about beating Higgins, and we need to show up, because a lot of the millennials, there was nobody to vote for. So that Sanders did wake people up to the fact that the political process seems inherently corrupt, that we all must have something dirty behind us or something we're hiding or skeletons on somebody's closet. But while that may be true for the other four, it is certainly not true for me, just to be sure. So that is, it's the transparency in politics. That's what I'm trying to bring. I mean, I am somewhat amusing in day-to-day life, but I'm actually very angry a lot when I read the daily news, and so the humor is a kind of a defense, but yeah, we don't like what's been happening. And we think it all starts with the politicians being pawns of somebody, and when they're supposed to be pawns of these people out here are supposed to say, well, you know, I don't want you to vote that way. I don't want you to vote that way. I don't want you taking dirty money and buying yachts. And it's like, well, darn it. Okay, fine, I won't. But that's where the Bernie Sanders voters have inspired me, is putting the transparency back in politics and then actually standing for something and being believable at that process.
Thank you, everyone. So now it's time to do the actual endorsement process. So we're going to have to ask all 5 candidates to please leave the room, go to the other side of the building. You can keep the pin as a keepsake. All right, so we're really excited to announce the winner of the Indivisible Acadiana endorsement. Coming in with 70% of our group's votes, we will be endorsing Miss Mimi Methvin. So, would you like to make a comment? Congratulations.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you all so much. This means the world. You have no idea. This is one of the first organizations that I joined after the election of 2016. It's helped my heart break over what had happened and was a big part in my decision ultimately to jump in. And so thank you all for this support. I know that we are connected around the country with people like ourselves who have a deep hunger for America to return to what it stands for, what the founders intended it to stand for, and to be a country that we're proud of, to live by principles and policies of kindness and compassion and thoughtfulness that we have departed from, to get away from this us and them mentality. So thank you. I am so grateful, and I look forward to working with you through the campaign and listening to you, listening to any suggestions. My ears are open, my heart is open, and I'm very grateful. So thank you.
And again, we'd like to thank all the candidates for coming out today, sharing their views with us. A round of applause for everyone. We'd like to thank JSP again for letting us host our event here and for always letting us use their space. Thank you to everyone for attending and taking part in this with us. We really appreciate your dedication to this race. And we hope to see you at our next monthly meeting, which will be at the Downtown Library on July 7th at 1 p.m. So with that being said, thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a great day.